don't know about you, but I don't really know anybody that would say, hey, Chris, you know what? I've just got way too much time in my day. In fact, most of my days are spent me just twiddling my thumbs looking for something else to do. No, in fact, almost everybody I know would say the exact opposite. They would say, I don't even have time for the essential stuff, let alone things like hobbies or hanging out with friends or catching up on sitcoms. So then the question becomes, if you're already busy, if you're already pushed to the max, how do you fit in something else, like a web design side hustle? And that is exactly what we are talking about with this week's guest, who wasn't just a dad, he wasn't just a husband, he wasn't just a full-time teacher. He was actually a student going to get not just one, but 2 master's degrees and then on to get a PhD. And while he was doing all of that, he was building a successful web design side hustle. And he's sharing how he did it with us this week. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Self-Made Web Designer Podcast. My name is Chris, and it's so good to have you here with us yet again. Every week is like just a great big family reunion. Only these are the kind of family reunions that you actually like to be a part of. So I'm glad that you're here. Consider this your weekly digital online hug from your friend, Chris. This week's guest is the one and only Thiago Oliveira. And I say his name that way because he spent a lot of time trying to teach me how to pronounce it correctly, and yet I'm still pretty sure that I'm not pronouncing it correctly. So, sorry, Thiago. Thiago was actually my roommate in college, and when I was first getting started, he was one of the first persons that I reached out to for advice on how to build a web design side hustle, because he himself had gone before me and figured out how to do it. There is so much goodness packed into this conversation that I couldn't fit it into just one episode. So this week is all about how to build a successful web design side hustle, even if you have a busy schedule. Thiago's sharing with us a whole bunch of his tips and tricks, and I know that you're going to love them. But before we dive in, I want to tell you about a free course at selfmadewebdesigner.com called the Web Designer Starter Kit course. This is a 4-video course that I map out the exact blueprint that I took to build a successful web design side hustle, going from knowing absolutely nothing to doubling my income in only 18 months. By building a web design side hustle, I was able to get out of debt and to thrive financially, and I know that you can too. So go to selfmadewebdesigner.com, sign up for the Web Designer Starter Kit course, skip all that learning curve business, and go straight to the results. All right, are you ready for the one and only Mr. Thiago Oliveira? Okay, here we go. Thiago Oliveira. So good to finally have you on the Self-Made Web Designer Podcast. What took you so long?
Well, what number is this? What's the what episode is this? Number what?
Oh, it's like episode 35-ish or so.
35. Can I just stop this podcast right now? Okay, and just reference that it was Big Daddy over here who taught you everything you know about web design. So why don't you sit over here on my lap, because you've waited 36 episodes to have me on when I should have been numero uno, right?
Yeah.
I believe
it's 35, and that is maybe slightly an over-exaggeration, but I'll let it pass because of the amazing hat that you're wearing on the episode. You definitely take the cake for the best hats. All I've had is a snapback, and you have a feather. So
I do have a feather.
For everybody listening who has not gone over to YouTube, I want to encourage you especially to do that on this episode, to take a peek at Thiago's hat in all of its glory. But I do owe a lot of where I am now and what I do as a web designer to you. You paved the way for me. You were doing this for years before I did, and then when I was getting started, you were the guy I called, or one of the guys I called when I had questions. So thank you for all of that. But In all seriousness, talk a little bit about your journey, what you do now, how you got started in web design, and what that looks like.
So I am, obviously I was born. If you can hear my accent there, I am from Brazil. I was a missionary kid. I was born in São Paulo, Brazil, and we just lived all over the place. Every 3 years, we would move from country to country. But my parents were medical missionaries, and then we came to the land of opportunity here in America, and then we joined this, what we like to call the Harvard of Dallas, Dallas Baptist University.
I've never heard it called that, but I'm going to start telling people I graduated from the Harvard of Dallas.
Yeah, it is highly competitive. And where I met, the talented Chris, Mr. Rack. And so it was, I became a school teacher right out of DBU, and then continue on getting my master's in counseling, and then got another master's just because I don't know why. And then I got a doctorate, which I still don't know why I did that, in educational psychology. And I've been in education for 16 years, actually. Today, this year is my 16th year. And this whole time, especially when we got married with Ryan, my wife, and we were both educators. She was a teacher, I was a teacher, and we were living our best life. Like, we didn't have mortgage, we didn't have kids, and we didn't have savings either. But we had plenty of money to just play around and buy stuff and enjoy being young and married. And then we had lovely Henry, Mr. Henry James. And we had the brilliant idea of buying our first home. And so now we had a mortgage and we had Henry. Then a big event happened. My wife, having Henry, onset her Crohn's disease and her arthritis. And so she really wasn't enjoying teaching at all. And so I just remember us having this conversation about, she was going to quit teaching, and then she wanted to just raise Henry, And so we went from, having plenty of money to now half her salary totally gone. And so to no money, really. And so I remember just sitting with her and just praying and being like, how are we going to make up whatever, 40, 50 grand a year that is gone, just gone. And at DBU, my major was a very, very competitive communications major. Okay, so difficult, and it's basically the major that everybody takes that just wants to enjoy 4 years of college.
Can't commit. It's the non-committal major.
The non-committal major. So I was taking classes like child development and nonverbal communication and all those wonderful classes. But one of them was web design and graphic design that I took, and I really, really enjoyed it, and always had an affinity to make things look prettier, And so then the opportunity kind of presented itself right as we're having this conversation about what are we going to do to make money. And it was, maybe let's start, investigating on web design. And this was 10 years ago or so. And that's what it all began. I started exploring. My first website was obviously free. Many of us that are starting out, a lot of them were just begging, right? You're like, please, I'll do it for free. I'll do it for free.
Yeah.
And so, that's how it all began. I just started. I think my first website that somebody actually had the courage to pay for was $500. I thought that was a huge, huge deal. I remember the first check that I got for $500. Of course, he wanted to divide it in two payments, $250 at the beginning and $250 at the end, just in case this fool doesn't deliver, But it was my first website about 10 years ago, and that's how my little journey started in the webosphere.
I mean, it's really impressive that you've done so many things. Like, you've gotten, like you said, multiple masters and gone on to have a doctorate. But how you're able to like navigate all of that, like you were going to school part-time, you had a side hustle, you had a full-time job, which in education, you know, like that's not something like you just walk through the door and all of, you know, the worries of the day just kind of brush off your shoulders. You kind of carry that with you. And you had a family, you had a growing family, you had all these responsibilities. So how were you able to balance all of that stuff and yet still able to grow your web design business?
Yeah, so it takes a lot of communication. You know, obviously, Ryan and I, she knew that there are seasons. There's going to be seasons where we're just going to be swamped, right? Big projects, and you know, especially in the beginning, as you're trying to grow this little tiny business, this little side hustle, you know, there were nights that, yeah, it goes into midnight, 1 a.m., just trying to get things done. Now, one thing about me, you know, I see a lot of your podcast stars. I wouldn't consider myself one. I mean, a lot of them are just very successful. And if I can speak at all for the people that are listening, I'm just kind of a generic, you know, just middle class, maybe low middle class, you know. I'm not incredibly talented or incredibly smart. It just an opportunity presented itself, and you know, I have anxiety. Certainly, you know, there was times that I doubted myself about whether or not I can deliver a particular project, and there might be some fears there. But I think the only thing that that happened for us is where I just put myself out there and learned as the process was going on. A lot of learning as you're doing it, maybe faking it until you making it kind of philosophy for me. And so for us, it was just, yeah, there were times where I'd be like, honey, this is going to be a long night for me, or this is going to be a long weekend. And we just had to make some sacrifices. There are times you just have to say no to some social stuff or miss out on some things just so you can deliver the project. And for me also, you know, I struggle with ADD all my life, you know, and what I've learned as a professional is that for me to be able to focus on a project or on anything that I'm doing professionally, I have had to be very organized. Because if I'm not organized and if I don't have great time, like if I'm not efficient with my time, then everything just kind of falls apart for me, and I'm unable to finish what I start, you know. And so I have learned throughout, you know, my years of career, now I'm 38, that to be very, very efficient with my time and do things probably quicker than the average person, you know. I just have to because of my kind of high level of distractibility. My energy with a lot of us is I just want to get things started. I have all the energy to get things started, and maybe lack some energy in the betweens and in finishing the project, you know. And so for me, I just had to learn to just do it as quickly as I can, and do it with quality as well. Try to find that balance. So certainly a challenge for us.
Well, and I know, you know, like especially, I mean, even today, like definitely when I was first getting started, the amount of time it took you to build something was a fraction of the time that it would take me to build something. And even now, you're like, hey, I got this, you know, because we collaborate on certain projects. And, you know, you're like, hey, I got this thing done. And I'm like, I gave it to you 2 days ago. You know, it would have taken me like a month to do. So talk a little bit about the process that you learned to become more efficient and more productive when it comes to, you know, taking care of your time, but also when it comes to just building the websites.
Well, certainly you and I can agree that we all have strengths. You know, Chris is incredibly talented, always been. He was that one kid in college where we're like, oh, he had this long hair, you know. we called him Sunshine, you know, from the movie. And, you know, he's a little guitar and he's just always talented. So you have these strengths that you just love to produce quality, whatever it was, whether it was a recording or a song you wrote or a graphic. And so that is something that you've always brought to the table whenever we are in projects. Just the quality of work for you is top class. For me, on the other side, I am just efficient. It just kind of comes natural to me, mainly, like I said, based on just struggle to stay attentive and my high level of distractibility that I was born with this, with ADHD, right? And so for me, it was more of how do I get to be professional in my everyday life. And so in my mind, I had to make a volitional decision, a conscious decision of I have to get it done while it's still in my conscience, like while I'm still in front of me, I gotta get it done. And so I just developed that over time of when it's in front of me, just get it done as best as I can. With you challenged me, and I think we challenge each other, right? You just had to make a decision. You got 60 variations of a logo or whatever. Just make a decision, For me, I have to be like, you challenge me to be like, yeah, you already make a quick decision, but is that the best decision, right? Is that the most quality you can? Maybe you should spend a little bit more time on it instead of just you're done with it because you're done with it. So it's I think we've both stretched each other throughout this process to for you to be, just make a decision and move on. And for me, maybe just think about it a little bit more, spend a little bit more time, make a little bit more detail and quality.
Well, I think it's really interesting, though, because it highlights the fact that there's not one cookie cutter template for a successful web designer. Like everybody has their own strengths, everybody has their own weaknesses, and like we are both successful web designers, side hustle web designers, and then I went on to have a full-time job in web design, but still do freelance side hustle stuff on the side as well. But it's not like I'm more successful than you in that, like we both get, really big projects that sometimes we do together. Like we're both charging the same amount to clients. And so, it's not like, I think it's encouraging. I think it's encouraging to people listening. Like you don't have to be one type of way in order to be good. You don't have to be like super creative. You don't have to be like super high quality level. Like you find what it is that your strength is and you focus on that, and that's what you deliver. So talk about that with clients that you've had. How do you communicate that strength? How do you differentiate yourself from other people? Like say somebody who would deliver a higher product, but it would take them double the amount of time. Like, how do you still win those projects?
Yeah, and I think that's because that has become my strength, that I can deliver not just on time, but I can beat the deadline. And so that is usually my pitch with clients. Is just, you're going to find that you're going to email me whatever revision, and I will get it done. I hate wasting people's time, okay? And so for me, and I hate wasting my own time, and so my time is valuable. It's become more valuable, right, for all of us once you have valuable humans around you, like your kids and your wife. And so to me, when I come home, that time is valuable to me because I'm spending time with my wife and my kids. And then I have valuable time now that I have set up at night or whatever, or in the weekends to do website. And so you don't have a lot of time like you do in a full-time job. We have all the time in the world to be creative and brainstorm. You don't. People like us, that's our hustle. We're side hustle. So we have to manage our time wisely and be efficient as best as we can, is to be efficient. I think that is the key. How can I be efficient with my side hustle so it doesn't become 2 full-time jobs? Nobody wants to have 2 full-time jobs. That's incredibly stressful. Nobody wants to work 80 hours a week. So, because you still have to function, and so for me, it has just been that, and I think also the tools, today's tools to create a website are evolving, right? I mean, it's a lot easier, everything out there. You don't have to know how to code to make a website, which is partly true. Back in the day, you didn't have millions of templates available that somebody had created. And so the tools available through WordPress, which is basically what we do is WordPress 100%. It's a lot easier. And so, yeah, when I pitch to clients, it's you will find someone who will answer quickly, who is responsive to your needs and to your requests, and will deliver the project quicker than we are setting her deadlines to be. And I think clients really appreciate the respect I have for them and their time, because they're busy. Usually these are either startups or they're redoing something or established small business or whatever. And they don't have a lot of time to be revising websites. They don't know nothing about it. Their website is incredibly ugly. They don't have a sense of design or style. So they're relying on me to provide that for them, and also deliver it in a reasonable time. And so I think that is how I've made my side hustle a living out of it. And to the point now where, yeah, I mean, it's not only match my wife's salary that she did as a teacher, it surpasses in some years, depending on the year. And I've been able to give that blessing to my family, allow my wife to stay home, right, and raise our kids, and not do it in a 40-hour capacity. Do it in much less at times than a part-time job, and so it's been a win-win situation for us.
So let's get down to like the practical nitty-gritty tools for getting a website done quickly. Like I know you've mentioned templates. I know you've mentioned like different processes that you have. So talk about your workflow, talk about your systems that you've used to make sure that you get projects done before the deadline.
I hate creating something from that has already been created. So I love editing and customizing something that is a template. So at first, when a client wants a website for a doctor's office, right? And so the first thing I do once I accept the project and we begin is I like to ask clients kind of their idea, their design idea of what websites out there that you love. You absolutely love physician websites that when you look at it, you're like, well, that's amazing. So they'll send me 3 or 4. And that way I can kind of have a framework of what what type of website I'm going to create that is a good design, but it also is a design that they will appreciate and they will think it's beautiful or presentable and functional and so forth. Because hasn't this happened to you sometimes where you create a beautiful website for them and then they're like, yeah, it's great. And then they'll destroy it, right? Can you just like change the whole website to like blue or something, And so, of course, at the end of the day, it's that great balance of trying to do something that we believe is a gorgeous website, but also something that they believe is beautiful as well. So that is a very important piece for me, because I find myself, once again, with the time management, designing something without understanding who they are and wasting my time when I probably should have spent a little bit more time understanding who they are and what they think is good, And so, so once they give me that, then I start looking at some templates, premium templates. I use ThemeForest for that and Envato. And I purchase a template that I believe would be comparable to what they're looking for, and then I just customize it to their needs. And whether that means purchasing a theme, purchasing plugins, premium plugins, and then just uploading their content and reformatting it to the theme.
That was really important for me, what you just said at the very beginning, because, and I know you helped me out a ton with that. Like I found that a lot of times had a hard time designing for the client. And of course, like you're building this thing for the client, but a lot of times I'd sit down, I'd be building this website according to what I liked, according to what I thought looked cool, and then I'd show it to them and I'm like, isn't this so amazing? And they're like, I need you to try again. And so that level of empathy and really like getting on their level to the point of you're not saying this in a way that's understandable, but you're like, I understand what you're trying to communicate, and it's a skill. It's a skill that takes time. It's like being a communication major and, having a master's in counseling and everything else that you have a master's in, like understanding people takes a lot of work. So how do you do that? How do you really cut to the core of what a client is looking for and what they're going to be happy with?
So I feel like we have different strengths with this as well, because I've noticed how you are much more upfront with clients and suggesting, okay, that is not pretty. That's ugly. Okay. Thank you for showing me an ugly website. Yeah. I'm going to tell you what's pretty, and so you have, you've always had, you have much more creative mind. And so you're able to pursue that. On my end, I'm a lot, I think it's interesting. I think I've never thought about that, but empathy, right? Which is probably the one thing that makes you a counselor in my job is empathy, is the skill of empathy and to understand what other people, putting yourself in other people's shoes. But yes, in the web designing, when you're with the clients, having empathy is essential, isn't it? I mean, just trying to understand what they think is appropriate, what they think is functional, what they think is worth the money that they're paying you for, because it's not like it's not like you're building a home necessarily where you have all these things that they like. I like this tile, and I want this color of the wall. So some of those things are subjective, right? And you're putting yourself and your creativity into their website. So I think what you have challenged me is to just be a little bit more upfront with my opinions, because at the end of the day, they're their opinions about the creative vision, and almost challenging them just slightly to push them to the edge a little bit, right? Like, so that you can also be proud of that work and potentially promote the website. Because there's websites we have done, bro, where it's like, I am not gonna put this anywhere. No,
not happening.
This is it started really well and it was wonderful, and then they just destroyed it, and I'm like, I'm done. I'm not even putting my name at the footer of this website.
Well, you've probably guessed from our conversation that Thiago and I have a lot of fun together, and I hope you had fun with us as well. And I hope that you learned a lot from the incredible insight that Thiago has to offer. I used all of his insight to build a successful web design side hustle, and I know that you can take his insight and do the same thing. He's coming back next week for another fun episode. And in this episode, he's going to be talking about all things pricing for web design side hustlers. So you do not want to miss it. Can't wait to see you next week. I can't wait for us to hang out and give each other digital hugs again. But until that gracious time on Wednesday morning at 12 a.m., don't forget, if you don't quit, you win.